IPEN, or the International Pollutants Elimination Network, is comprised of over 600 public interest NGOs in more than 120 countries. We work to strengthen global and national chemicals and waste policies, contribute to groundbreaking research, and build a global movement for a toxics-free future. But this side event will focus primarily on the transboundary trade in refuse-derived fuel, RDF. You'll be hearing a lot about that. And other similar fuels, like processed engineered fuels, which contain a high fraction of mixed plastic waste. You will hear about the Australian government's waste export ban being undermined by legislation allowing PEF exports to neighboring countries. The Australian case will illustrate the lack of controls around this hazardous trade. Further insights will be provided into the trends around RDF imports, trade, and production affecting Indonesia and Malaysia, and concludes with the examination of recent plastic waste trade data relevant to the Asian region and the Basel Convention controls.
My name is Lee Bell, and I'm the Mercury and POPs Policy Advisor for IPEN. I'll be talking today about the Australian waste export ban and how that's being undermined by exporting waste plastic as fuel into the region. The Australian context around plastic waste export. I'll just give a little bit of history as to what's been occurring in the last few years. So in 2017, many of you will be familiar with China's National Sword policy, which was implemented to reduce environmental damage from imported waste into China. Waste exporters like Australia relied heavily on China to take the waste and now redirects those waste exports to other countries in Southeast Asia. Post-2017, Australia's low-grade plastic waste exports to Asia that were destined for recycling often ended up dumped, open burned, or used as fuels with minimal recycling. POPs food chain contamination from burning plastic was identified as a result. Import countries began to reject and return Australian shipments of low-grade and contaminated plastic waste. 2019. The Basel Ban Amendment enters into force, preventing OECD countries exporting hazardous waste, including many types of plastic waste, to all non-OECD countries. As I mentioned, for decades, Australia had followed an export model of waste recycling. Australians would place their recycling material in their recycling bins, believing it was heading to processing facilities within Australia and being turned into new plastic waste goods. The reality was much darker. The plastic waste that were collected for recycling had been exported to China, Malaysia, Thailand, and other Asian countries, including Indonesia. Similar waste from Europe and US also followed this route, and from many other countries. Much of this waste is not recyclable and was eventually open burned or used as crude industrial fuel. Refuse-derived fuel and process engineered fuel are basically shredded plastics, paper, timber, fabric, and other combustible waste compressed into solid fuel pellets or bales for burning in cement kilns and incinerators in Asia. These may be exported from Australia as product, i.e. fuel, and not waste, even though they are made of waste. In this form, they may avoid the restrictions of the Basel Convention, international trade in waste, where they should be classified at least as Y48 due to its high plastic content. However, the Basel plastic waste guidance fails to address the implications of this waste trade. And we're currently dealing with the plastic waste technical guidelines here, and there is very little information available to anyone in that guidance about this particular trade.